Some stories are so terrifying, so well documented, that they blur the line between myth and reality. Tonight, we're diving into 5 real horror stories from around the world, cases investigated by police, witnessed by families, and whispered about for decades. From haunted homes in America to phantom legends on dark roads, these tales will make you think twice before turning off the lights. Let's begin. Story 1. The Ammons Family Haunting, the Demon House of Indiana. What would you do if the very walls of your home whispered back? If the footsteps you heard at night didn't belong to anyone alive? And if even the police, sworn officers of the law, admitted they saw something they could never explain? This is the story of the Ammons family. It begins in Gary, Indiana, 2011. A working-class town, once known for steel, now marked by abandoned houses, poverty, and crime. But among those houses was one particular rental property on Carolina Street, a small, ordinary-looking home with beige siding and a front porch that seemed to sag under the weight of time. For Latoya Ammons, a devoted mother of 3, this house seemed like a fresh start. Affordable, quiet, and big enough for her kids to have their own rooms. Moving day felt like a blessing. Boxes stacked high, laughter echoing through the walls. But within hours, the joy of a new home began to fade. It started small. Ants swarming the kitchen floor, even though she kept it spotless. A sudden foul smell, thick, almost metallic, rising from the basement, though nothing was there. And at night, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, moving back and forth in the hallway. At first, Latoya told herself it was stress. Moving is hard. New places always creak. But then, her children began to complain. "Mom, there's someone in my room. Mom, I can't sleep. He's watching me." She would go in, check under the bed, open the closet, reassure them. There's no one here. But in her own heart, she wasn't so sure. The nights grew heavier. Each evening, as the clock edged past midnight, the house seemed to come alive. Doors creaked without wind. Shadows flickered across the walls, though no lights were on. The family cat hissed into empty corners, its back arched, fur raised. Then came the knocking. At first soft, like a fist tapping against the basement door. Then louder, pounding, so hard it rattled the hinges. Latoya would rush to check, only to find nothing. No one outside. No one in the basement. One night, while praying before bed, she saw it. A dark figure, tall and featureless, gliding past the bedroom door. Her youngest son screamed from his room at the same moment. She ran in, flipping the light switch. He was in tears, pointing to the closet. "Mom, it was in here. It was watching me." The children become targets. The activity seemed to focus on the kids. One daughter complained of being pushed by unseen hands. Another claimed to see large, shadowy figures at the foot of her bed. And her youngest son began to act different. He would stare blankly at the ceiling, eyes wide. His voice would drop unnaturally low, words spilling out that weren't his. "They don't like you here. They want us." At school, teachers noticed his behavior too. He would lash out suddenly, or sit silent for hours, unresponsive. Then came the night that terrified even Latoya, a mother who thought she'd seen everything. The possession episode. Her 9-year-old son was with her mother, Rosa, in the living room. Suddenly, his eyes rolled back. His body went rigid. Then, slowly, impossibly, he floated backwards up the wall. Rosa screamed, clutching her rosary, shouting for Jesus' protection. The boy slid up until his body was horizontal, pressed against the plaster, before collapsing to the floor. Doctors later examined him, but found no medical explanation. A nurse who witnessed it signed a sworn statement. "This was no seizure. I know what I saw." Police involvement. By now, the Ammons family was desperate. They called the police, hoping someone could help. At first, officers rolled their eyes. Haunted house complaints weren't unusual in Gary, but when they entered, things changed. Their radios malfunctioned inside the house. One officer recorded video, only to capture a strange mist moving across the screen. Another swore he saw wet footprints appear on the floor, though no one was barefoot. The official police report described paranormal activity observed by multiple officers. This was not hearsay. This was on record. The Ammons family realized this wasn't something the police could stop. Whatever lived in that house wasn't human. So LaToya turned to the church. Priests enter the picture. Father Michael Maginot, a Catholic priest in Gary, was asked to investigate. At first skeptical, he agreed to visit. Inside, he said the house felt heavy. The air was thick, oppressive, as if every breath was stolen from his lungs. While praying in the living room, the blinds began to sway. Though the windows were sealed shut, a candle flame bent unnaturally sideways, refusing to extinguish. Maginot performed blessings with holy water. For a moment, peace settled over the house, but then it fought back. The children convulsed during prayers. LaToya's eyes rolled back, her voice deepening into guttural growls. Rosa, her mother, claimed invisible hands wrapped around her throat until she could barely breathe. The priest concluded, this was no ordinary haunting. This was possession. Exorcism attempts with permission from the Diocese of Gary. Father Maginot prepared for an exorcism. He performed 3 separate rites. The first was in Latin, traditional prayers of deliverance. The second was more forceful, commanding the spirits to leave in the name of Christ. During the third, LaToya's body convulsed violently. She shouted in voices not her own. At one point, her lips curled into a smile that wasn't hers, whispering, "You can't make us leave. This is our house." The priest persisted, sprinkling holy water and pressing a crucifix to her forehead. The growls turned into screams, then silence. The house gains infamy. News of the haunting spread. Reporters called it the House of 200 Demons. Local TV stations covered the story. Paranormal investigators from across the country came to Gary, Indiana. Some refused to enter, claiming they felt sick the moment they reached the porch. Others left in panic after hearing whispers echoing from the empty basement. Even Zach Bagans, host of Ghost Adventures, later purchased the home for investigation. His documentary, Demon House, would make the story infamous worldwide. The aftermath. Eventually, after repeated exorcisms, the Ammons family moved out. They left everything behind: furniture, clothes, toys, never to return. For years, the house sat empty, feared by neighbors. Some swore they still saw figures in the windows, though no one lived there. In 2016, the house was demolished. But the question remains, did destroying the building end the nightmare? Or did whatever lived there simply move on, waiting for the next family? To this day, officers, doctors, priests, and social workers all confirm their accounts. These aren't ghost hunters chasing shadows. These are people who had no reason to lie, and every reason to stay silent. And yet, they didn't, because what they saw inside the Ammons home was too real, too terrifying, to ignore. Story 2. The Smurl Haunting. A home taken over. Imagine finding your dream home, only to realize you were never the only ones living there. For over a decade, one American family claimed they were tormented by unseen forces, scratching, growling, attacking, even as priests and paranormal investigators tried and failed to make it stop. This is the true story of the Smurl Haunting, a case so disturbing it became one of the most infamous in U.S. history. The move. In 1973, Jack and Janet Smurl moved into a duplex home in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. They were an ordinary working-class couple with 4 daughters. Jack was a Navy veteran, steady and practical. Janet was a homemaker, devout and loving. Their parents, John and Mary, lived on the other side of the duplex. At first, the house seemed perfect, spacious, affordable, close to family. The laughter of children echoed through the halls. But within months, strange things began to happen. A dark stain appeared on the carpet, no matter how many times it was scrubbed. The television burst into flames, though it wasn't plugged in. Pipes leaked constantly, though plumbers found nothing wrong. The Smurls chalked it up to bad luck, a fixer-upper with quirks. But the quirks grew darker. The first signs. By 1975, the house's atmosphere had changed. Foul odors, like rotting flesh, would drift through the rooms. Cold spots appeared in hallways, sudden drops of temperature that left frost on the windows in midsummer. At night, the family heard footsteps, dragging across the floor, though everyone was accounted for. Then came the voices. Late at night, whispers drifted from the walls. Jack swore he heard his name spoken, low and mocking. Janet woke to a guttural growl in her ear, though no one was beside her. Their daughters began complaining of being watched in their sleep. One night, their youngest screamed, "Get it out of my room! Please get it out!" When Janet rushed in, the child pointed to the corner. A shadow stood there, tall, black, featureless, before melting into the wall. The attacks begin. The entity grew bolder. Jack was pinned down in bed by an invisible force, his chest heavy, his body paralyzed. Janet woke to scratches on her arms, red welts burning her skin. One night, while washing dishes, she felt icy hands wrap around her waist. She spun around, but no one was there. The children began suffering nightmares so vivid they'd wake screaming, clawing at their sheets. Their pet dog growled at empty corners, refusing to enter certain rooms. Neighbors, too, reported hearing screams and pounding through the walls, even when the family wasn't home. By 1985, the Smurls were desperate. They turned to the Catholic Church for help. The Warrens investigate Enter Ed and Lorraine Warren, famed paranormal investigators. Ed, a demonologist. Lorraine, a clairvoyant who claimed to see spirits. They had investigated the Amityville horror a decade earlier. When the Smurls reached out, they agreed to visit. The moment Lorraine stepped inside, she said she sensed 4 entities. One was a harmless old woman. Another, a violent young man. A third, a mentally challenged spirit trapped in the house. And the fourth, something far darker, a demon. During their investigation, they recorded growls and knocking sounds that responded to their questions. Lorraine claimed she saw a black mass hover over Janet as she prayed. Ed reported being physically shoved, though no one touched him. The Warrens concluded. The Smurls weren't imagining this. Their home was infested. Exorcisms and escalation. The church authorized multiple exorcisms. During prayers, objects flew across rooms. Crucifixes were ripped from walls. One night, Jack claimed he was sexually assaulted by the demon, an experience he described with deep shame but insisted was real. Janet reported a similar attack. Their daughters were also targeted, lifted from their beds, slapped by unseen hands. Neighbors began avoiding the house, whispering about the screams that carried into the street. Reporters caught wind, and soon the Smurls' torment was public. But the entity thrived on attention. The more they tried to drive it away, the more violent it became the final years. For over a decade, the family lived like this. They endured endless prayers, countless exorcisms, even moving briefly. But wherever they went, the activity followed. Finally, in 1989, after a particularly violent attack, another major exorcism was conducted. This time the house fell silent. No more scratches, no more growls. The torment seemed to end. The Smurls, exhausted, eventually moved away for good. Some called the Smurl Haunting a hoax, a family seeking attention. Others point to the multiple witnesses, the Warrens' testimony, and the sheer consistency of the claims over years. Was it a demon, a restless spirit, or something darker that feeds on fear? What we do know is this. For over a decade, the Smurl family lived in terror inside their own home, a home that should have been a sanctuary, but became a prison. And maybe the most unsettling thought is this: if it could happen to them, it could happen to anyone. Story 3. The Bride of Karsaz Road. Every city has its urban legends, ghost stories whispered in the dark. But sometimes, those legends aren't just stories. In Karachi, Pakistan, there is one such tale: a phantom bride who appears on a long, lonely road. Drivers claim she flags them down, begging for help, until her face transforms into something unspeakable. This is the legend of the Bride of Karsaz Road. The road itself. Karsaz Road is long and winding, stretching through Karachi's quieter outskirts. By day, it seems ordinary, but by night, it becomes a place few want to travel alone. Streetlights are dim, shadows stretch unnaturally across the pavement, and the silence between passing cars is almost suffocating. Locals say the road is cursed. Taxi drivers refuse to take fares that way after midnight. Families warn their children, if you see her, do not stop. The first sightings. The story begins decades ago. Some say in the 1970s, others earlier. A newlywed couple were on their way home late at night. Their car crashed on Karsaz Road, killing the bride instantly. Since then, her restless spirit is said to wander the same stretch, dressed in her red wedding attire, waiting for help that never came. Witnesses describe her as striking: a young woman in crimson bridal clothes, standing at the roadside. At first glance, she seems real, tangible, alive. But those who stop to help soon realize something is very, very wrong. Encounters with the bride. Encounter 1. The hitchhiker, a taxi driver, exhausted after a long shift, once picked her up. She sat silently in the back seat, head lowered. When he asked where she wanted to go, she simply whispered, "Just drive." Moments later, he glanced in the rearview mirror. Her seat was empty. He swore his cab grew icy cold, his breath fogging in the night air. Encounter 2. The chasing bride. A group of college students dared each other to drive the road at 2 a.m. They laughed, blasting music, until they saw her, standing in the middle of the road. The driver swerved, barely missing her. But when they looked back, she wasn't behind them anymore. She was running alongside the car, her face twisted, her eyes hollow, her mouth stretched unnaturally wide. The student screamed. The car engine sputtered, then died completely. When it restarted seconds later, she was gone. Encounter 3. The transformation. Another driver claimed she flagged him down, asking in a soft voice, "Please drop me off." But when he opened the passenger door, her face shifted. Her features melted away, leaving only dark, empty sockets where eyes should be. He sped off, heart pounding, swearing never to drive Karsaz Road again. The legend spreads. Over the years, stories multiplied. Some drivers crash their cars swerving to avoid her. Others report nightmares for weeks after an encounter. No one agrees on what she wants. Some believe she's searching for her groom. Others think she lures drivers to their doom. But one detail remains constant: her sudden appearance and the overwhelming sense of dread she leaves behind. Why she haunts folklorists compare her to other phantom hitchhiker tales around the world. In Mexico, La Llorona weeps for her lost children. In Japan, Kuchisake Onna stops strangers, asking if she's beautiful. In the U.S., countless highways have reports of women in white. But the Bride of Karsaz stands out because she isn't just a myth. Her legend is fueled by consistent eyewitnesses, from taxi drivers to students, from locals to travelers. Too many voices telling eerily similar stories. The warning. So if you ever find yourself driving down Karsaz Road late at night, and you see a woman in red standing by the roadside, do not stop, do not look back, do not even slow down, because some brides never make it home, and some roads never let you leave. Story 4. Sahar Hashmi's encounter, the woman with the lantern. Celebrities live glamorous lives on the outside, but sometimes, behind closed doors, They face horrors they'll never forget. This is the terrifying true account of Pakistani actress Sahar Hashmi, who claims she came face to face with something inhuman, a tall, lantern-bearing woman who appeared in her home. The House with Secrets. Sahar Hashmi had recently moved into a new home. It wasn't particularly old, but like many houses in Karachi, it had a basement, a dark, quiet space where she often stayed. At first, the basement seemed normal, a little cold, a little isolated, but nothing unusual. But Sahar noticed odd things. The air felt heavy, especially after midnight. Objects sometimes weren't where she had left them, and at night, she had the constant sense of being watched, even when alone. She brushed it off. She was busy with her career, with life. Ghosts? Those were just stories. Until one night proved her wrong. The appearance. It was past 2 a.m. Sahar was in her basement room, unable to sleep. The house was silent. Then, she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the staircase that led down into the basement. At first, she thought it was a family member, but the steps were too heavy, too drawn out, echoing unnaturally in the stillness. She turned toward the stairs, and that's when she saw her. A woman, tall, bald, with skin so pale it looked mannequin-like. She wore no normal clothes, only a long, ragged dress, and in her hand, a lantern that glowed faintly, casting flickering shadows on the basement walls. The figure didn't stumble like a person. She glided, step by step, into the room. The warning frozen with terror. Sahar couldn't move. The woman's face was emotionless, hollow, her eyes dark voids. The figure raised the lantern slightly, and in a chilling, hollow voice, she spoke. "Do not stay awake too late at night." The words echoed, not just in the room, but inside Sahar's mind, as if the voice wasn't spoken out loud but pressed directly into her thoughts. And then, just as suddenly as she appeared, the lantern flickered out. The figure vanished. Sahar was left in complete darkness, her heart racing, her skin ice cold. The aftermath. The next morning, she tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was dreaming, maybe exhaustion was playing tricks. But she knew what she saw. Every detail, the lantern, the woman's bald head, the voice. It was too real, too vivid. For weeks afterward, Sahar couldn't sleep in that basement room. She eventually left it empty, refusing to stay there past midnight. When she later shared her story publicly, it sent shivers through her fans. Because unlike a legend, this wasn't passed down or retold by strangers. This was her own personal encounter, an experience that, to this day, she insists was real. The Lantern Woman. They say spirits reveal themselves for a reason. Was the lantern-bearing woman a warning? A restless soul? Or something far darker, preying on the sleepless? Whatever she was, one thing is certain. If a pale woman with a lantern ever visits your room at night, don't ignore her warning. Story 5. Chowkandi Graveyard. Whispers among the tombs. Graveyards are meant to be places of rest, but some never let the dead sleep. On the outskirts of Karachi lies a centuries-old burial site, filled with ornately carved tombs and silent shadows. By day, it's a monument to history. By night, it's a place locals fear to enter. This is the haunted legend of Chowkandi Graveyard, where whispers rise among the tombs. The forgotten cemetery Chowkandi Graveyard is ancient. Its sandstone tombs, carved with intricate patterns, date back to between the 15th and 18th centuries. Historians see it as a cultural treasure. Archaeologists admire its artistry. But locals see something else. A cursed place. For decades, travelers, guards, and curious visitors have reported strange phenomena inside the cemetery at night. Some leave shaken. Others refuse to ever return. The atmosphere after dark. As the sun sets, Chowkandi changes. The carvings that seemed beautiful by daylight take on sinister shapes. Tombs cast long, jagged shadows across the sand. Visitors describe sudden chills, as if icy hands brushed their skin, despite Karachi's warm nights. A suffocating silence, broken only by whispers carried on the wind. The undeniable feeling of being watched. One night guard claimed he saw figures moving between the tombs. Thinking they were thieves, he shouted. But when he approached, they vanished into thin air. The encounter's encounter 1. The shadow figures. A group of university students visited on a dare. As they explored, they noticed dark figures standing atop the tombs. The figures didn't move, didn't blink. When the students tried to get closer, the shapes dissolved into the air, leaving only cold gusts of wind. Encounter 2. The Whispering Graves. Another witness claimed he sat by a tomb, only to hear whispers all around him. At first faint, then louder, like dozens of voices speaking in a language he didn't understand. When he fled, the voices followed him to the cemetery's gate, then fell silent. Encounter 3. The guardian spirit. Locals believe Chowkandi has a guardian spirit, a tall, cloaked figure that patrols the graves. Drivers passing by late at night say they've seen a man in black walking slowly among the tombs. But when headlights hit him, he disappears. Why it's haunted folklore suggests the cemetery is unsettled because many of the tombs belong to warriors and tribes who died violently. Others claim grave robbers disturbed the dead, angering their spirits. Some paranormal enthusiasts believe the sandstone carvings themselves hold energy, trapping echoes of the past. Whatever the cause, one thing is certain. Chowkandi has a reputation so strong that even locals avoid it after dark. The restless dead. Graveyards remind us that life is fragile and death inevitable. But in Chowkandi, death is not the end. So if you ever find yourself wandering its ancient tombs as the sun sets, remember, the carvings may be beautiful, but the whispers that rise from the graves are not meant for the living.